Donald Trump, the President of the United States, ordered a royal guard to salute him. However, what was the guard's response? The subsequent events left the entire palace in silence and reminded a former president in no uncertain terms that this is not America. He did not raise a hand or even glance in Trump's direction. Want to know exactly how it unfolded? First, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. You are aware of the specific type of London afternoon in which the sky is a perfect shade of gray and the wind is just strong enough to cause the Union Jack to sway lazily against its pole. The sleek convoy of jet-black SUVs that rolled through the enormous wrought-iron gates of Buckingham Palace was exactly like that. The vehicles possessed the distinctive American diplomatic appearance, which was characterized by tinted windows that were darker than eyeglasses, reinforced plating that was capable of preventing a small missile, and a subtle yet unmistakable sense of, "We are very important people inside here." Tourists were already erecting their phones along the barriers in an effort to capture a glimpse of the individual who was significant enough to approach the palace as if they owned the place. Donald Trump emerges from behind the closed door. The man continues to carry himself with the subtle grace of a bulldozer in a porcelain shop. Despite his age of 78, perfectly pressed navy overcoat, with the signature red tie capturing the light, and he is adjusting his collar as he scans the courtyard with the expression of someone who is mentally calculating the value of all this real estate if it were to be bulldozed and replaced with condos. "You are still participating in the medieval cosplay phenomenon, correct?" He addresses one of his assistants, and indeed, he speaks at a volume that is audible to the palace personnel in the vicinity. You would expect that with all of this real estate, they would at least attempt to modernize a bit. It may be beneficial to employ genuine security personnel rather than individuals dressed in Halloween costumes. The British diplomatic staff exchanges those perfectly polite but profoundly strained glances that only come from years of dealing with challenging international guests. He is not corrected by anyone. The comment is not even acknowledged by anyone. They continue to perform their duties with the unique British style of maintaining a professional demeanor despite internally shrieking. Warrant Officer Jonathan Parr, 38, is now in a state of complete stillness at his ceremonial post, situated across the expansive gravel courtyard that crunches satisfyingly under your feet and likely costs more per square foot than the majority of homes. And when I say motionless, I am referring to the fact that the individual could instruct actual statues. The creases of his crimson tunic are so pointed that it is possible to injure oneself. The gray sky is reflected in the mirror-like shine of his footwear. He maintains a 1,000-yard gaze that is exclusively associated with rigorous military training, and his eyes are fixed straight ahead. However, the following is a fact that most travelers are unaware of, and that Trump is unaware of, regards to this specific individual in a costume. Parr is not merely a ceremonial ornament. He distinguished himself during joint UN operations in Syria. We are discussing convoy extractions in hostile zones and corridor security during times of unrest. The type of deployment in which maintaining a low profile is literally the deciding factor in whether or not one returns home. He had been commended for his ability to maintain his position during a mortar strike outside of Aleppo, and we are not referring to a brief display of pyrotechnics. Parr refused to vacate his position until each civilian in a supply convoy was evacuated safely, as this was a continuous assault. His citation commended a conceptual display of composed bravery under fire, a kind of composure that is not a natural occurrence. It is developed in environments where silence can be a matter of survival and discipline can save lives. Trump is not gazing at a theatrical prop when his gaze falls on him across that courtyard. He is observing a combat veteran who has forgotten more about genuine discipline than the majority of individuals ever acquire. "That one," Trump says, indicating toward Parr with the casual gesture one would use to select a menu item. We should determine whether he is aware of his superiors. His assistant glances up abruptly, likely already estimating the number of apology calls that will be necessary. "Sir, this is not included in the schedule," but Trump is already on the move, departing the designated visitor pathway with his signature swagger, which implies that he has never encountered a boundary that he could not simply assume did not exist. The travelers' phones actually rise like a synchronized digital ballet behind the rope barriers, as everyone can sense that something is about to go sideways, and no one wants to miss it. A diplomatic attaché intuitively reaches out to redirect Trump, but he reconsiders his actions. In the presence of 50 cameras, physically restrain a former president of the United States. Right there, that is a career-ending move. "Sir, if you could remain with the tour group," calls one of the British liaisons, her voice evoking the tone of someone who is internally bracing for disaster while attempting to be helpful. Trump does not even turn his head. "Be at ease, my dear. Please accept my greeting." Unwilling to intervene, a Secret Service agent moves to shadow him, evidently uneasy. One of Trump's personal aides is already offering words of apology to a palace official who is becoming increasingly agitated in the background. And those phones? They are all currently recording, as it is evident to all in the audience that the event that is about to transpire will be the type of event that can be recounted as a story. Trump approaches Warrant Officer Parr with the casual confidence of an individual who has lived his entire existence anticipating that doors will open and individuals will step aside. He halts a mere few feet away, near enough to be personal, but far enough to maintain plausible deniability, and folds his arms as if he were inspecting a used car. He declares, projecting his voice for the benefit of the expanding audience, "Now that is an extraordinary outfit. Superb. Extremely theatrical. What is the name of the costume designer? Is it an individual from the Bridgerton show?" A few members of his entourage are capable of producing these forced, uncomfortable chuckles, the type of laughter that implies, "I am obligated to laugh because he is my boss." But this is profoundly awkward. Parr maintains an unwavering gaze, not a single vibration. Trump takes another half step forward, smirking, and enters the space that every tourist is aware is not safe to enter. You are aware that in the United States, soldiers are required to salute their commanders. Generals, Marines, Navy personnel, and others have saluted me. Even received a salute from a French colonel, which is a difficult feat to achieve. He actually imitates a stiff military posture, raising his hand in an exaggerated imitation salute that would be amusing if it were not so profoundly inappropriate. "Do you not salute your president?" Trump continues, his head cocked in the manner of an individual who believes he is being clever. "Indeed, I am the president. To a significant number of individuals, I am still. Therefore, proceed. Demonstrate regard for the individuals. That constitutes a command." The audience becomes paralyzed. That moment when casual curiosity transforms into something much more unsettling is actually palpable. The expressions behind the phones have changed from amusement to something closer to concern, although they are still up. Parr's visage is entirely concealed. Not perplexity, not defiance, not irritation. It is comparable to observing a professionally disciplined disguise that is impeccably composed. There is no external indication that he has acknowledged Trump's presence. A few tourists' faces indicate a gradual comprehension that they may be witnessing an event they would prefer not to see, as they slightly lower their phones. Trump's assistant approaches, murmuring, "Sir, he is not supposed to..." Trump gestures him off without breaking eye contact with the motionless guard, saying, "Shh." He acknowledged my words. He slightly leans in, reducing his voice to a level that is not quite murmuring. "Please extend a brief salute. Do you desire to instill a sense of respect in an ally?" A small British girl draws on her mother's coat with the insistent urgency that only children can manage, in close proximity to the rope barrier. "Mom, is it permissible for that man to converse with the soldier in that manner?" Her mother does not respond immediately. When she does, her voice possesses the meticulous tone that parents employ when they are endeavoring to elucidate a complex concept to a child. "No, my dear. However, there are individuals who believe that the laws do not apply to them." Parr's eyes are fixed on a distant point that guardians are instructed to concentrate on, while his rifle is held at an exact angle. He remains perfectly still. It is not that he is disregarding Trump. It is that the maintenance of his position necessitates a level of concentration that surpasses the events that immediately surround him. Trump's arms are raised in the "can you believe this" gesture as he turns slightly toward the audience, gesture that has become his signature. "What? Is there anything? Is he frozen? Is this individual on protest or something?" An American tourist, likely in an effort to be helpful, shouts, "He is not going to move, sir." That is essentially the entire purpose For the first time, Trump's practiced showmanship begins to reveal genuine irritation as he glances back at Parr. The leer is only slightly equivocal. Do you believe that you are superior to me? Do you believe that this uniform renders you invulnerable? His voice becomes more akin to a growl. I requested that you salute me. Presently, there is nothing, not a single blink, not the faintest change in posture. Suddenly, the performance that was initiated has evolved into something entirely different. The crowd has transitioned from amused onlookers to witnesses who are becoming increasingly uneasy. Certain individuals are entirely deactivating their smartphones. The merriment has entirely ceased. Parr has not spoken, has not moved, and has not even acknowledged that anything peculiar is occurring. Nevertheless, in that perfect silence, he has just reminded everyone present of the exact boundaries and what happens when someone who is accustomed to having their way meets someone who simply refuses to give in, all without uttering a single syllable. The tension in that courtyard is so thick that it could be effectively cut with a ceremonial sword. It is evident that Trump is still standing in the same location, approximately 3 feet away from Warrant Officer Parr, anticipating a reaction, any reaction. However, he is not receiving any compensation, not a single item. Trump mutters, shaking his head with an exaggerated grin that cannot quite reach his eyes. This guy is something else. I have been saluted by Marines on 5 continents, received a rousing ovation from the Israeli Knesset. This individual is incapable of blinking. He begins to slowly circle, his hands clasped behind his back, as if he were a drill instructor evaluating a particularly recalcitrant recruit. How do you maintain a composed demeanor while engaging in this activity continuously? Is it not tiresome to act as though you are statues? The flawless forward gaze of Parr remains unwavering, as unyielding as granite. The quiet voice of an older gentleman, possibly in his 60s, is heard from somewhere in the throng. He is wearing a faded navy blazer with a small poppy pin on the lapel. He speaks at a volume that is audible to those in his vicinity, but his tone elicits an interest in others. He subtly nods toward the motionless sentry, stating, "That individual has visited Syria twice, maintained a corridor while civilians evacuated amid sniper fire. He is not deceiving." The man's sleeve is tugged by an adolescent who is no older than 10 or 11. Who is the orange man who is shouting at the soldier? The veteran gazes downward at the child before returning to the scene that is unfolding in front of them. A loud voice attempting to attract the attention of an individual who has earned it through hard work. The audience is currently experiencing a ripple effect, as individuals begin to comprehend the content they are viewing. The phones are still in use, but no one is currently smiling through their displays. The atmosphere has transitioned from a peculiar form of entertainment to a much more serious and uncomfortable environment. His eyes are perpetually fixed on the expanding audience of observers, as Trump's aide inspects his watch for the 3rd time in the space of a few minutes. They are no longer amused, and it is evident that he is contemplating the extreme consequences of this going viral. Trump continues, his voice now conveying a sharper edge. "You're not saluting because of politics, because I was not your partner?" Parr has yet to respond. Or is it the ego? Are you under the impression that you are superior to me, as you are positioned in that manner? The silence continues to elongate until it becomes its own form of response. Slowly shaking her head, an American woman at the rear of the throng speaks to no one in particular, but her voice is loud enough for multiple individuals to hear. He does not believe that he is superior. He is aware that he is not inferior. Another individual remarks, "This is excruciating to observe." Indeed, it is, as what began as Trump's attempt to establish his dominance has evolved into something entirely different. His voice has lost its performative machismo and has acquired the crack of genuine irritation, indicating that he is becoming increasingly agitated. "Are you a soldier?" he demands, advancing even further toward the line he is prohibited from crossing. "Do you adhere to directives? I have just given you one." The silence that ensues is no longer passive. It is not devoid of contents. It is the purest and quietest form of active resistance, the type that does not necessitate grand gestures, bellowing, or fists. Presence is sufficient. Ability to remain composed. The complete refusal to be influenced by rhetoric. A teenage girl whispers to her acquaintance, "Why doesn't he just leave?" The response is, "Because he is losing, and he is aware of it." Trump hesitates for the first time in the entire exchange. His gaze is drawn to the throng, and the scene that he observes is likely not what he had anticipated. Their demeanor has become grave. Some individuals appear to be humiliated for him. Some individuals appear to be incensed by him. No longer does anyone appear amused. His arms are raised in an exaggerated gesture of frustration as he endeavors to recover. I suppose he is exempt from even a presidential order. It is possible that we will observe whether the king is accorded more reverence. However, the jest is entirely unsuccessful. No one is amused. No one even grins, as they all seem to comprehend a concept that Trump does not. Warrant Officer Jonathan Parr is not being condescending. He is currently undergoing disciplinary action. The protocol he is adhering to has been in place for centuries, a protocol that is unyielding, irrespective of the individual's title, personality, or expectation of deference. The courtyard is gradually being filled with the force of that discipline, the ability to remain steadfast in the face of every camera, offense, and provocation that tries to derail you. Trump continues to speak, gesture, and attempt to control the situation. Unfortunately, there is no longer any genuine interest in listening. Parr is being observed by them. The individual who has remained stationary, a man who is impervious to change, and perhaps for the first time in his entire public existence, the individual who consistently demands attention is devoid of it. The crisp cadence of polished military boots against flagstone is the unmistakable sound that breaks through the tension. A tall woman in an impeccably pressed navy uniform emerges from the palace side gate, causing everyone to turn. She is moving with a measured urgency that suggests an individual in authority has determined that the situation has reached a climax. Royal Household Protocol Office, Major Caroline Brooks. If you have ever been curious about the appearance of calm authority, she is essentially the textbook definition. Tall, with a sharp-featured appearance, and possessing the type of demeanor that is derived from decades of experience in managing situations similar to this one, where politics intersects with protocol, and someone must tenderly, yet firmly remind everyone of the boundaries. She approaches Trump with the practiced ease of an individual who has previously interacted with challenging leaders of state, providing a polite but unmistakably firm nod. "Mr. Trump," she declares, her voice evoking the distinctive British quality of being impeccably polite while concurrently refusing to engage in any debate. "My name is Major Brooks. I must respectfully request that you return to the designated viewing path on behalf of the royal household." Trump emits one of his signature smiles and gestures toward Parr without actually gazing at him. "I am simply in awe of the arrangement here, Major. Outstanding costumes and remarkable posture. You should observe the rapidity with which my Secret Service personnel salute when I pass by." Brooks does not even flinch. "Sir, the Coldstream Guards are not actors. They are currently employed as members of His Majesty's Armed Forces. Your presence in this vicinity contravenes the established protocol of an active ceremonial post." "Do you adhere to the established protocol?" Trump raises his eyebrows as if he is sincerely amused by the concept. "I have been saluted by kings and generals, Major. Please do not inform me that I am unable to converse with a man who is wearing a bearskin headdress." She meets his gaze directly. Her expression is clear and unwavering as glass. However, none of them required a second explanation, sir. A loud bang. Exactly that. A basic statement that lands like a precision-guided missile. No dramatic gesture. No raised voice. The throng surrounding them becomes completely silent. One can actually hear the sharp inhalation of breath of another individual. The onlookers are startled by a scarcely audible oof. Trump attempts to shrug it off by gesturing broadly toward the palace with both arms. "You know, I have always had a fondness for this location. Outstanding architecture. I even had tea with the Queen at one point, an extraordinary woman. I informed her that this location would be ideal for golfing if the back garden were leveled and 18 holes were incorporated." Major Brooks's demeanor remains unaltered by even the slightest degree. "Mr. Trump, this is not a golf course." The audience actually chuckles at that, not with him, but unmistakably directed at him. And you can observe it in his expression. That instant when an individual who is accustomed to regulating the environment becomes aware that the environment has shifted. He returns to Parr, his expression still tense as a result of the guard's persistent silence. "I merely requested that you salute me. You would believe that I had insulted the crown treasures or something." Brooks's tone remains flawlessly professional, but each word carries the weight of steel wrapped in silk, as she states, "You instructed a British soldier to break formation on royal ground. Our tradition dictates that service is rendered to the crown, rather than to individuals." Trump's jaw opens, and then closes. His assistant approaches him, murmuring something urgent near his shoulder. He waves the fellow off with a visible expression of irritation. All right, Trump murmurs, taking a half step back. It's the first retreat he has made all afternoon. "I was unaware that you were so particular about your mannequins." Brooks does not respond to the insult. Her silence is not indicative of wounded vanity. It is customary, a professional discipline that is self-sufficient and does not require defense. Warrant Officer Parr remains stationary behind her. He has yet to acknowledge any of this. He continues to remain as though he were sculpted from the palace's very stones. There has been another change in the throng. A middle-aged man, who appears to be a teacher, leans down to speak with one of his pupils. His patient demeanor toward the group of adolescents surrounding him suggests that he is a teacher. He murmurs, "That guard just earned more respect by remaining silent than most individuals do by shouting on a stage." The teenager's gaze remains fixated on Parr as she nods. He did not utter a single word. Is it possible that Trump is attempting to salvage something from this moment by casting one more glimpse around the courtyard? However, the scene has completely changed. He is no longer the subject of the visitors' attention. They are not maintaining their attention on his words or anticipating his subsequent actions. The sentry is under surveillance. The individual who maintained his courage. The man who was impervious to motion. Furthermore, the officer who made her point without the necessity of raising her voice. A whisper is heard in the throng. He maintained the line. A second voice follows, and never even looked him in the eye. Trump is no longer the owner of the moment. He entered a tradition that does not bow, does not bend, and certainly does not salute on demand. And now, he finds himself in the midst of it, recognizing that despite his practiced dominance, expectation, and bravado, certain objects are simply unmovable. The electromagnetic tension of a confrontation that has reached its absolute breaking point is palpable in the air. Trump is currently situated just beyond the point at which Major Brooks intercepted him, and he is still visible to Warrant Officer Parr. His assistants remain silent, hovering behind him like anxious birds. Even the Secret Service agents exhibit that distinct professional demeanor, as if they are eager for this moment to conclude in order to return home. However, Trump is not yet completed. Not yet. He makes one final attempt to regain control of the situation by turning back toward the guard. "I made NATO pay up," he says, projecting his voice for the entire courtyard to hear. "Dollars in the billions. I contributed more to your army than any of your prime ministers ever did." The throng is affected by a ripple. Some individuals' minds are turned. Despite the fact that a few travelers instinctively gaze at Major Brooks, she remains remarkably still, allowing the moment to unfold. Trump advances once more, this time maintaining a defiant and unyielding stance at the very edge of the line, rather than crossing it. That is genuine authority. That is the essence of leadership. Therefore, demonstrate some consideration for me. Salute your ally. Parr does not flinch, twitch, or acknowledge the demand in any way, as he has done with all of the previous ones. Finally, he relocates. The situation is not particularly dramatic. It is not performative. It is not incensed. It is simply decisive. In a formal repositioning, Parr's right hand adjusts on his rifle, lifting it slightly. Discipline is not violated. Maintaining his position, just a subtle, well-executed modification that any military observer would recognize as a closing gesture, a soldier's method of expressing, "This interaction is done." Then he begins to communicate, a single line. Resolute, unyielding, delivered without ever breaking the ceremonial forward gaze. This uniform is not responsive to ego. The courtyard was hammered by the words in complete silence, resembling a thunderclap. The collective exhalation of the audience is audible. It is not audible. It is not necessary for it to be very noisy. It is delivered with the same calm precision that Parr has maintained throughout this entire ordeal, but it completely shatters every presumption Trump has made about this moment. Trump opens his mouth to respond, but no sound emanates. His expression undergoes a complete transformation for the first time in the course of the afternoon, not into anger or offense, but into an entirely different emotion, something that is nearly recognizable. Not admiration, no consideration. However, the faint, grudging realization that he has just collided with something much larger than himself. A young child, who is likely between the ages of 9 and 10, raises his small hand to his forehead in an uncertain salute from behind the rope barrier. Although he is unable to comprehend the events he has observed a quality in the officer that resonates with him. There is something that is worthy of recognition, and he is the only one who can do so. Then an additional child replicates the action. Then, their mother. Then the elderly Welsh veteran who had previously spoken. Then, 2 American tourists who have been filming discreetly lower their phones and straighten their backs. One by one, individuals along the rope line turn their bodies toward the sentry, to refrain from staring, refrain from filming, to refrain from passing judgment. However, to acknowledge, to engage in an activity that transcends celebrity and pageantry, to remain stationary, to give their own silence back to the individual who has wielded it with more authority than any podium has ever offered. Parr does not gaze upon them. His obligations do not include the approbation of the crowd or public opinion. However, his attention is no longer required by the visitors. They have acquired knowledge from his example and are now adhering to it. Additionally, for the first time in potentially decades, Trump refrains from uttering a word. Slowly, his hands, which have been animated in gesturing throughout the entirety of this encounter, fall to his sides. He examines the features of the individuals who are observing the courtyard. Not intended for acclaim, not for approval. However, he was attempting to evaluate an event that was evidently unexpected. He is no longer the focal point of this moment. The individual whom he attempted to control has occupied the entire courtyard as a result of his unwavering discipline and ethereal silence. Major Brooks exhales slowly and deliberately, and he gestures toward Trump's advisors. One of them approaches and murmurs, "Mr. Trump, we should resume the motorcade." This time, he refrains from disputing. He refrains from objecting. He does not request an additional opportunity to articulate his argument. His entourage follows him as he turns and proceeds to return to the palace entrances. However, the serenity remains unbroken as he departs. No one raises their voice. No one ridicules. There is no one who offers a greeting. However, no one also adheres to this rule. He is alone, enveloped by the most potent sound in existence, the silence of a man who refused to be moved. The echo of Trump's leather soles on stone progressively diminishes as he traverses the courtyard, each step sounding slightly smaller than the previous one, akin to punctuation marks on a sentence that has already concluded. His aides maintain a respectful distance behind him, their gazes meticulously directed away from the crowd. The Secret Service agents appear subdued as well. They are no longer participating in a grand performance. They are merely present to facilitate a peaceful exit. The ambiance is extraordinary. No one raises their hand. No one raises their voice. However, no one is denied entry. It is the type of profound silence that necessitates no explanation or stage directions. It possesses its own significance, comparable to the pause that occurs between the final remarks of a judge and the descent of the gavel. Warrant Officer Jonathan Parr has resumed his perfect stillness, his rifle at the exact regulation angle, and his eyes fixated on the distant point that guards are trained to focus on. He is situated behind them. To an individual who is currently arriving, it may appear that he has been standing in this exact position for the entire time, unaffected by drama, unaffected by the spectacle. However, all those in attendance are aware of the truth. They have observed an event that is beyond the scope of a brief photograph or a viral video. Trump does not acknowledge the visitors as he passes them in the front. There were no responses. There are no ripples. There were no further attempts to establish a connection. It is possible that he comprehends that such actions would not be reciprocated. It is possible that he has finally realized that this audience has discovered a more compelling topic to concentrate on, Some of the observers continue to stand with their hands uplifted in an impromptu salute. Some individuals maintain a solemn expression and an upright back, as if they have become a part of a ceremonial event. Now, there is no longer any filming. The phones have been either completely deactivated or reduced in volume. This moment is too significant to be recorded casually, regardless of its evolution. They are not maintaining records, they are actively engaged. Trump arrives at the motorcade that is awaiting him. The car door is opened with the characteristic efficiency of his main aide, but Trump hesitates before entering. For a brief instant, he turns back. The tranquil tribute has immobilized the entire courtyard. Faces did not turn toward him. Rather, they turned toward the red figure who imparted knowledge about fortitude without using words. He concludes his examination of part. The sentry has not relocated. Contrary to the spectacle, not for the sake of silence, not for the cameras, the audience, or the former president of the United States. And that immobility, that unwavering refusal to deviate from the standards of duty, may be the most concerning aspect of Trump's character. Without uttering another word, he enters the vehicle. The door closes with a gentle, final thump. The convoy commences its departure moments later, its tires rattling against the ancient stone as it glides through the palace gates and vanishes into the bustling traffic of London. However, the courtyard remains unchanged. The visitors remain in their current location. The silence persists. Although they may be unable to articulate the precise reason, certain individuals experience weeping in their eyes. Some individuals are simply silent, as they contemplate an experience that they have never before encountered. The changing of the guard ceremony maintains its highly precise choreography. Their measured rhythm is accompanied by heavy percussion. The footwear are in perfect harmony as they march. The centuries-old tradition that underpins each stride propels the flowing river of scarlet and steel forward. Parr remains in his position until his precise moment arrives, and when it does, he departs with the same faultless precision. There was no recognition of the events that occurred. There were no glimpses directed at the crowd. There is no indication that any anomalous events transpired. He simply fulfills his obligation and vanishes beneath the palace archway, leaving behind a courtyard filled with individuals who will never again perceive fortitude in the same manner. The spectators refrain from cheering or celebrating as he disappears from sight. Dramatic gestures and elaborate finales are unnecessary. They remain stationary. In that position, they have acquired a fundamental understanding of the distinction between requesting respect and earning it. A teenage female seated near the front whispers to her companion. He did not even blink. An American woman remarks, "That is the first time I have ever witnessed him lose an argument." Her spouse responds quietly, "No, that is the first instance in which I have observed him acknowledge that he was never truly engaged in the conversation." And then, as if liberated from a trance, the courtyard gradually resumes breathing. Phones emerge from purses. Conversations evolve from whispers. The tourists progressively disperse, but they are now moving in a different manner. Additional consideration: quieter, due to the fact that no individual who witnessed this encounter will depart Buckingham Palace with the same perspective as they did upon their arrival. They have observed an event that cannot be imparted through leadership seminars or political science courses. They have observed the consequences of genuine discipline colliding with manufactured authority. They have discovered that the most effective response to demands is not always a response at all. They have found that at times, the most effective course of action is to merely refuse to move. Therefore, what are your thoughts? When an individual demands respect that they have not earned, should you still honor their request? Alternatively, should you maintain your stance, as Warrant Officer Parr did, in the presence of the entire world? And perhaps the more significant inquiry is there still influence in selecting silence over spectacle in the era of social media and instantaneous responses? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We sincerely review each and every one. Additionally, these discussions are considerably more significant than one might anticipate. If this moment resonated with you, if it prompted you to reevaluate the concepts of discipline and respect, please click the like icon. It is genuinely more beneficial than you may realize. Ensure that you subscribe and activate the notification button to ensure that you never miss our daily stories about the extraordinary individuals who preserve these traditions. Additionally, if you are aware of an individual who could benefit from a reminder of the true definition of strength, someone who believes that power is achieved by making commotion until people pay attention, please share this video with them. Your screen is already anticipating the publication of our forthcoming Royal Guard narrative. Click it now, and we will see you tomorrow with another moment that serves as a reminder of the same truth. Genuine authority does not necessitate acknowledgement. It is unmoving. And when it does, even the most boisterous voices in the world realize that they have nothing more to say.